To talk more about their investigative report is Marcus Sheff, the CEO of Impact SE. Thank you so much for being with us. Tell me more first, sir, if you could, about how in Qatar school children are taught about Hamas. What kind of language and characteristics are children taught about Hamas as an organization and the fighters and terrorists within them?
Well, the textbooks teach that Hamas firing thousands of rockets into civilian populations and forcing, as they call them, Zionist citizens to enter shelters, stopping airplane traffic to and from Israel, well, it's glorified. It's described as brave, and it is described as remarkable. You know, this is so strange because Qatar is very proud of its education system. It considers itself international leaders in education, puts on all kinds of congresses at the United Nations, but its own textbooks clearly do not meet international standards. That example of the glorification of Hamas terror is just one example. But, you know, if you sit on the fence, as Qatar does, between the Muslim Brotherhood on one side and the West on the other, you will get splinters. And that is exactly the situation in relation to the Qatari curriculum. Apart from the foreign policy implications, of which there are many, you cannot split your curriculum between textbooks that are, if you like, Western influence, and there are several of those, and those that are extremists, and expects school children sitting there in classrooms not to suffer from cognitive dissonance. I mean, they clearly do. This paradox of Western educators and Muslim Brotherhood domination is not doing anybody any good in Qatar.
What has changed since the Abraham Accords? I mean, school children and students, they saw Israel being embraced like never before by other Arab Muslim states. There were several normalization and peace deals signed. They watched that happen. So when they go to school, what are they being taught?
Well, normalization between Israel and Arab nations is essentially rejected. This is, you know, really the first time we have seen it in textbooks. So it's not something which is, if you like, old and has carried through the curriculum. This is new. So it's very, very clear that, you know, it is, if you like, strategic. It is there for a reason. In the same way that, you know, jihad, war, martyrdom, violent jihadi movements are praised, you know, the same thinking is clearly going to reject normalization between Israel and other Arab countries. By the way, juxtapose that with the curriculum of the United Arab Emirates, which talked about that normalization agreement between Israel and the UAE 2 weeks after it was signed, which was, you know, really quite remarkable. But you're not seeing that in the Qatari curriculum. What you are seeing is how central anti-Semitism still is to this curriculum. You know, this curriculum teaches that Jews control the global economy. Yes, that old hateful idea. Jews are the reason that Germany lost the First World War. They exploited the post-First World War economic crisis. Therefore, they are to blame for the rise of the Nazi Party. So, you know, they are the architects of their own destruction. Yeah. This is classic anti-Semitic tropes in the Qatari curriculum in 2021. You mentioned there absolutely, you have an image of it.
You mentioned now that the UAE, I mean, how quickly they evolved with their textbooks and their new editions and embraced change and modernization and even a rapprochement with Israel. So it can change. What is the hope for this happening in Qatar as well? Is there any hope?
Well, this is, of course, the question. Yes, change is absolutely possible. That is a very good example, the UAE and Mohammed bin Zayed making that decision that the Muslim Brotherhood written curriculum needs to go. And by the way, the Muslim Brotherhood teachers teaching that curriculum also need to go. And the institution of a curriculum of what's called wasatiyah, the middle way, tolerance in Islam, in all the studies that are running through this curriculum. So absolutely possible, and it's something which doesn't have to take too long. By the way, Saudi Arabia is also a good example of that. We put out a report on the Saudi curriculum in 2019. We'd also done one in 2003 and 2008, and we had found a great deal of problems with that curriculum. But those reports were taken to the Saudis. They said they were going to make changes. By September 2020, they had. Most of the anti-Semitism was taken out by the Saudis. The jihad was taken out, the homophobia was taken out. So, these are two very good examples of change being possible. Is that possible in Qatar? Well, just look at the nature of Qatari comments in relation to its foreign policy. Look at the way the Qataris quite clearly place themselves as far as supporters of the Muslim Brotherhood is concerned, that particular axis with Turkey. And I think it's going to be a lot harder for that change to happen. But it doesn't mean it is not possible because, again, I go back to what I said at the beginning. If they genuinely see themselves as leaders in education, which, is quite ironic given what is in this curriculum, then they must step up to the plate.
فضرب الرقاب حتى إذا أثخنتموهم فشدوا الوثاق فإما منا بعد وإما فداء حتى تضع الحرب أوزارها ذلك ولو يشاء الله لانتصر منهم ولكن ليبلو بعضكم ببعض والذين قتلوا في سبيل الله فلن يضل أعمالهم.
So when you meet those who disbelieve in battle, strike their necks until, when you have inflicted slaughter upon them, then secure their bonds, and either confer favor afterwards or ransom them until the war lays down its burdens. That is the command. And if Allah had willed, He could have taken vengeance upon them Himself. But He ordered armed struggle to test some of you by means of others. And those who are killed in the cause of Allah, never will He waste their deeds.
فثبتوا الذين آمنوا سألقي في قلوب الذين كفروا الرعب فاضربوا فوق الأعناق واضربوا منهم كل بنان